request you to introduce our next speaker.
Yes. So thank you so much, all the speakers. And we have covered a very important aspects of diets. Now from the audience, we'll be having questions. So I call upon all the speakers for the discussion so that we can get the answers and we can be more enlightened.
I request Dr. Thanu ma'am to take over for the question answer session. Uh, we can ask all speakers.
Yes, we can. All speakers can be online and keep on their video on, and we can discuss this. There are plenty of questions in question box also. Yes, Dr. Riddhi, Dr. Sanu, madam, Shilpa madam, anything else? Yes, thank you.
Right. So
Welcome.
we already have a question from the audience. So should I ask the question?
Yes, ma'am.
Right. So from Dr. Bhavya, we have a question. She's been asking that can we take a homemade protein powders along with the milk twice a day? And does it meet our daily protein requirement?
With the speaker.
This is Meenakshi Bajaj. Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am, you
Yeah.
are audible.
Thank you, Dr. Patel, for the opportunity to be part of Swastikon. For this question, I would say, depending on the quantity of milk and the quantity of protein present in the powder, only you can decide whether it will meet your requirement. Your requirement presently, as per RDA 2020, has been changed from 1 gram to about 0.8 grams per kg body weight. Depending on the scoop size of the powder and the quantity, or in turn, I would say the composition, whether it's a whey protein or it's a casein protein, and whether your urea creatinine is normal, whether you need so much, depending on the scoop size, the quantity of protein available, the composition of the protein powder you're using, and how much quantity of milk, only then one can tell whether you can meet the protein requirement. I think to just give a blanket statement like this has become difficult for us to answer.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ms. Meenakshi ma'am, for answering this question.
I'll just add a point here. She has mentioned homemade powder. So maybe she means a mixed nuts and seed powder more than the ready-made, the whey and the casein. So if you're adding some nuts powder or mixed nuts and seeds to your glass of milk, good idea. It is highly unlikely that you will overshoot your protein requirements. But yes, as Meenakshi said, if we are talking about whey and casein, commercially made powders, one has to be careful about the addition.
You need to also remember to add on, since when you're making a home-based protein powder, you may be adding skimmed milk powder. So that could be a source of whey or casein. So, but anyway, as Niti ma'am very clearly said that you will hardly overshoot. But then I think there is a lot of if and buts. We need to know your height, weight, your biochemical parameters for us to tell you what the requirement is and whether you're able to meet the requirement with this home-based concoction.
And ma'am, also like when we are taking, like what time in the day we are consuming, that also matters a lot.
No, why should that matter? Why should that matter? We are talking of
if somebody is taking, for example,
yeah.
If somebody is taking this milk and nuts and seeds powder at night compared to somebody would take it in the morning, would it differ?
No, the bioavailability will not change whether you take it in the morning or in the night.
In fact, that cup of warm milk will give him or her a good sleep.
True.
Yeah, and it is finally the total protein requirement.
Yeah, so you can't make it overnight over a glass of milk with some concoction.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much, everyone.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes, Riddhi, we have plenty of questions.
And we have another question from the same person, Dr. Bhavya. She's been saying that as many research says that, at least we should have 1 egg per day. So is it good to take the normal egg available in the market, or the organic egg should be taken?
How will you label that it is an organic egg?
Yeah. So yeah, just to add on over here, that if you're sure of the source of egg, and if you're cooking the egg well, then it is absolutely safe even to have a normal egg. But if you really are particular about having organic eggs, and you know where is it coming from and is it certified, then definitely the organic egg would be a safer option. But again, consuming the normal egg which is available in the market, and if properly cooked, it's absolutely safe, especially during this time.
Yeah, and I think an organic egg with a label of organic egg is also expensive. So if you see the financial aspect, I think.
And also important thing is, becoming organic doesn't change the macronutrient composition. Egg still has the same amount of protein, whichever you consume. Again, not making any, not saying that organic eggs are bad or other eggs are good or any which ways, but the macronutrient composition of eggs remains same.
In fact, no, there are eggs, I mean, say chicken, which are fed especially on omega-3 fatty acids to get, more of omega-3 in the egg yolk. So you get certain eggs like that. But there is a lot of ifs and buts with the labeling. And is it, how do you confirm that it is organic? Is it FDA approved? There are so many ifs and buts. But as I think Ritika and Shilpa mentioned very clearly, the composition remains the same unless you're grass-fed and omega-3 fed and separately. They are different otherwise.
Yes, Ritika. Yes, Riddhi. Dr. Riddhi, you wanted to share something, please.
No, nothing from my side, Dr. Yash. Thank you so much. And I think we had a very good interaction. I don't see any further questions. Do you guys see any further questions?
There are plenty of comments there. So they have asked any age restriction. Yes, go ahead.
Is there any age restriction for following intermittent fasting? Who can follow this? And what type of intermittent fasting can be followed by many people? This was asked by the same person, Dr. Bhavya.
Can I add? Or
Please.
Yeah. So there is typically intermittent fasting is a period of no eating followed by a period of eating, right? So typically, if you look at it, the studies, most of the studies which are done on our individuals who are above 18 years of age. But if you look at it otherwise, socially, there are many fasting which are done in various communities across the world. For example, Ramadan fasting, which is also like time restricted feeding, where you're not eating for about 12 hours and eating for other time, is done by individuals who have crossed puberty. So if you look at it religiously, there are people much younger who are following. But if you look clinical studies, most of the studies are done on individuals who are 18 years and older. And what is the most common form of intermittent fasting? There are many kinds of intermittent fasting. But what I am seeing is time restricted feeding of 14 to 16 hours, no food, followed by 8 hours of food, which is very, very popular in India. Probably across the world, it's 5:2, where 5 days of eating and 2 days of no eating is also very, very popular.
Yeah, I would just like to make one comment here. We see a lot of youngsters who are trying to follow intermittent fasting, and where the major change they have made is that they are skipping breakfast because they are waking up late. So that's not the kind of intermittent fasting we are looking at. You wake up at 11:30, 12, you don't have your breakfast, and then you say that I'm following IF. Does not work. So intermittent fasting has to be scientifically followed, and the timing, as Shilpa had mentioned in the presentation also, when you eat, the circadian rhythm also matters a lot. So skipping a breakfast and then having food at 10 p.m. may not give you as many benefits as starting early and not eating in the latter part of the day.
Even we have a question. Does intermittent fasting affect the glucose metabolism and insulin synthesis? Yes, madam. Shilpa, madam. if you can start with it. Yes.
Okay, so first of all, in known cases of diabetes, even if they are doing time restricted feeding, we typically advise them to go back, get their OHA's regime changed, and then come back. But if it is pre-diabetes, we have seen and not on metformin or any other drugs, then we do, because it causes weight loss, then we have seen change in glucose uptake or glucose sensitivity. But during lockdown, and I presented that study in RSSDI, where I had two groups of people, individuals following intermittent fasting and others just calorie restricted diet. And I really did not see any statistical difference between both, though HbA1c and glucose improved in both the groups. So in clinical practice, when I actually randomized these people and tried to study, they all, as long as you restrict calories, glucose metabolism improves.
Wonderful. Thank you. Any
Ma'am,
other inputs? Yes, yes, Dr. Riddhi, please.
Yes, Shilpa ma'am, I have a question regarding this. So
Yeah.
if a patient says that, it's okay if I don't eat the breakfast, but I feel very, very hungry post evening, right? So that's where, like, can we start giving them that window regime from, like, from 12 o'clock onwards, as you have been talking about, that we should not be giving them breakfast skipping. But there are many patients who says that. So what would you say about it?
So is this for weight loss or is this for diabetes?
It's regarding the weight loss. So for example, I have a patient who is 120 kg, and he has lost quite a few kgs, like 20 kgs around, but now his weight is quite stuck. So now I have to strategize the weight, right? So this is what I tried, but he feels very, very hungry at night, and then he's not able to stick to that plan.
So like Niti rightly said, you cannot use dietetics to like what you like and not like what you don't like. So ideally, if you want to follow circadian rhythm, actually plays a lot of role, and eating late in the night has never helped, even if you're eating in that 8-hour window period, if you're doing 14:8 regime. So it is better that you advise them not to eat at night and find out the reason why that person is eating at night. Is there a reason? I mean, if that person is seeing Netflix every night and sitting and eating, it's not a good idea any which ways. So if you need to find out, dwell deep into it, because I don't think it is right to eat that late in the evening. So you need to find out the reason, and you do not need to, and you need to follow the circadian rhythm basically.
Okay. Okay.
Also,
Thank you
what
so much,
happens
ma'am.
is it reverses the biological clock. It reverses the biological clock when you're not going to eat in the morning and you're going to eat in the night. It's not only going to worsen insulin resistance, it's also going to, step up ahead towards all metabolic diseases like metabolic syndrome in toto. So end of the day, you would not lose weight. End of the day, even if you're attempting to lose weight, you will finally come back to metabolic syndrome. So this reversing of biological clock, and as Shilpa was mentioning about the circadian rhythm, it will actually worsen the status. So as Niti ma'am was very clearly saying, to avoid the skipping the breakfast story, you should avoid that, and you should start early and wind up early, and choice of snacking or choice of whatever foods which are giving satiety, as Shilpa was mentioning. You need to choose on foods which give you satiety, which are of low energy value. That's more important than,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah.
And we have further questions. So Dr. Bhavya again asking that, do sudden change from carbohydrates diet to protein diet, does it lead to constipation?
If you're not going to take enough fluids and you're going to not take enough of fiber, definitely it's going to constipate you. If you're going to remain only on protein, which is probably going to come from non-vegetarian foods, unless you're lubricating the non-vegetarian foods with a lot of fat, you may not have constipation. But otherwise, basically, if the choice of carbs is going to be moving out of complex carbs also and replacing only probably non-vegetarian food sources of protein or some quantity of milk, I think you're going to be in trouble. It's basically the fiber fluid and the movement which takes part when it comes to constipation.
What was the
Again,
question? I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question.
Yes, ma'am. The
Yeah, ma'am.
question.
So, yeah, go ahead.
So I'll
Okay.
just add one point here. In the Indian population, there's this serious fear that we will be stepping our protein intake too much. We are taking too much protein. But when we are talking about vegetarians, that fear is completely wrong. It is very difficult to have excess protein intake in our Indian vegetarian diet. So that should not be a great cause of concern for vegetarians. Yes, non-vegetarians is a different issue, but Indian vegetarians, that I will cut my carbs and have a lot of protein and I will overshoot my protein intake, maybe I'm taking too much, it is highly unlikely that that scenario can happen in the Indian vegetarian scenario.
Thank you, ma'am. We have another question from Dr. Vikas Jaiswal, that can mustard oil be substitute for olive oil? If anyone can add something.
So mustard oil and olive oil don't have the same composition. Composition is different. While mustard oil has 70% MUFA, olive oil has about 55 to 60% MUFA. But olive oil is a great oil for Indians. So, mustard oil is a great oil for Indians. And recently published data also shows that it is really working well even in obesity. Recently published paper by Dr. Anup Mishra. So you can go ahead and have mustard oil.
Thank you so much, ma'am. And there are many questions coming. The question asked by Dr. Mohit Khanchandani is, can continuous fasting be hazardous for obese individual?
What is continuous fasting? Just don't eat food. I mean, after a point, it is going to be hazardous because of two things. A, there won't be calories, macronutrients won't be there, but more importantly, there'll be no micronutrients in the food. So that's going to be hazardous. And second thing is, the person is going to get hungry, right? Whether obese or lean, after a point, person is going to get hungry. So I don't think continuous fasting is, continuous caloric restriction is something which I believe is very good. So you keep eating your normal meals, just restrict the calories in every meal. That is called as continuous caloric restriction, which is really good.
Continuous fasting will basically mean starvation.
Thank you, ma'am. Ma'am, we have question from Miss Nikita Pasumarthi, that can one follows diet like 1200 calorie diets and protein recommended per day according to their weight?
Yes, absolutely. 1200 calories is not a standard caloric requirement. That will be highly individual depending on the weight, the person's weight, and what is the kind of weight loss we are looking at. But if we are meeting our protein requirements of 0.8 to 1 gram per kg body weight, and this is also the ideal body weight, not your, if you're 120 kilos, that's not the calculation we take. Yes, calorie restricted, moderately high protein diet with moderate carbohydrate intake is a very practical way to approach weight loss, again, in the Indian setting. And of course, it will have great repercussions on the glycemic control also if we are talking about diabetics.
Perfect. Thank you so much, ma'am. And again,
we have
the
last
question.
minutes going through, and there are plenty of questions coming up. I see the plenty of pop-ups coming up. So let's address as many, and then we can take it personally also then. Please.
Yes. How can we overcome the bloating while following the intermittent fasting?
So the bloating caused by the intermittent fasting. So how can we avoid that? That is a wonderful, yeah.
There is no bloating because of intermittent fasting. If you don't chew your food well, and the choice of foods, I think that's more important. Like there is sometimes bloating, flatulence, distension, if you have not chewed the food very well. So it depends on that more than intermittent fasting. It's a choice of foods.
In fact, once you do intermittent fasting, bloating goes away because you are eating lesser, so you are less bloated most of the time. Unless when you break the fast, you eat a 500 calorie meal, then you're going to be bloated. But if you're going to eat smaller meals, so the problem with intermittent fasting is people think that when you do IF, you don't have to watch calories. So in that 8 hours, people eat like 10,000, are happy eating as many calories, and that causes bloating. So if you're restricting calories while you break the fast, there won't be no bloating.
And I think it is also very important that how you break your fast.
As in what you
Like-
eat when you break your fast, right?
Yes. For example, if we break the fast with the fruit, or let's say with any vegetable sources, rather than just going on cereals right away, I think that also makes a difference. That's what I've personally analyzed. That fasting, breaking the fast with the fruit makes a huge difference.
Thank you so much to all the speakers who have joined us, and we have many questions, but we'll address them personally through our through our speakers. So thank you for this session. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Shilpa madam. Thank you, Neeti madam, Meenakshi madam, Rima madam. Thank you, Dr.
Thank you
Riddhi.
so much for the opportunity.
Thank you, Dr. Patel, for having us.
It is indeed pleasure. And we always believe the sessions should start with ladies, and you all bless us.
Thanks, Shilpa.
Hello, Dr.
Hello,
Zahu.
sir.
How are you?
Good to see you.
So let's proceed to the second session. Yeah.
Hello, Dr. Rajput.
Hello, Shilpa. How are you?
I'm good.
Hi.
So now